My name is Thalia Merrin. I'm 35, a strategy director at a brand agency in Seattle, and I've spent most of my life being the reliable one, the capable daughter, the one who didn't need much, the one who quietly let her younger sister take the spotlight, the praise, and the last slice of cake, because that's what I was taught love looked like. But nothing prepared me for the moment Lyndon, my own sister, stole my wedding. Not just the date or the venue. She took everything, with my parents' blessing. And my fiancé? He didn't stop her. He watched it happen. And that's when I realized, this wasn't just a family betrayal. This was a setup. I didn't just lose a wedding. I was targeted. And when I finally uncovered the truth, I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I took back control, quietly, deliberately, and permanently. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted the most, stay with me. You need to hear what happened next. Growing up in the Merrin household meant learning early on that fairness was negotiable and visibility was optional, at least for me. My sister Lyndon was the star, the golden child with big blue eyes and a dramatic flair that kept everyone orbiting around her emotional weather. I was older by 3 years, quieter, more logical. I asked for little and got even less. My achievements, honor roll, scholarships, landing my first job, were met with polite nods. But when Lyndon got a participation ribbon in a middle school art show, my mother threw her a garden party. By the time I was in college, I had made peace with the imbalance. Or so I thought. I carved out a life of independence, moved across the country to build my career in Seattle, and rose through the ranks on nothing but talent and sheer work ethic. I built a world where my worth was measured by strategy decks and client wins, not by how loudly I cried or how many times I failed in front of my parents. Then I met Graham Mercer. I was giving a keynote at a brand symposium in San Francisco when he approached me. Tailored suit, steel gray eyes, and the kind of self-assurance that made the room tilt slightly toward him. Your breakdown of emotional brand equity, he said, was surgical. I'd like to buy you coffee. Or maybe offer you a job. He wasn't joking, but he wasn't pushy either. It felt respectful, curious, but not invasive. I didn't know it then, but that would be his pattern. Give just enough to feel safe, never enough to feel seen. Graham was unlike anyone I dated. Precise, calm, brilliant in the way high-functioning people can be when they've built entire identities out of knowing what everyone wants to hear. We talked about architecture, obscure documentaries, niche vineyards in Oregon. Within 2 months, I was in love. Within 6, we were engaged. He proposed on a private overlook in the Cascades, the sun setting behind us, a photographer he had hired hidden in the trees. The ring was vintage, Art Deco, with a fire that caught the light like it had something to say. I said yes, without hesitation. When I called my parents, my mother's first words weren't, "Congratulations." She said, "Does Lyndon know yet? She's been struggling since her breakup with Kyle." Not exactly the response I'd imagined, but I brushed it off, because for once in my life, I had something that was entirely mine. We booked a venue in Bainbridge. Glass walls, water views, early summer roses. My Pinterest boards bloomed. Linen swatches, calligraphy samples, playlists. I didn't even care that Graham wasn't interested in the details. I figured that was normal. I was used to doing things myself. But the moment I emailed my save the dates, Lyndon called. She was excited, overly so, asked about the caterer, the DJ, even the signature cocktails. I remember thinking, for a woman who usually rolled her eyes at wedding talk, she was suddenly very involved. I didn't see it coming, not yet, but the storm was building. It started with flowers. Lyndon texted me one afternoon, "Peonies and ranunculus? That's such a bold choice. Not very you, though." Not very me? I stared at the screen, confused. I hadn't told anyone, except Graham and my florist, about the flowers. But I dismissed it. Maybe she guessed. Maybe it was a lucky assumption. Then she showed up to my gown fitting. Uninvited. "I happened to be in the neighborhood," she said breezily, as if my tailor was a casual stop between mani-pedis. She offered commentary on the silhouettes I tried, made notes on her phone, and asked the boutique owner if they had this design in a blush tone. I wasn't sure why she was even there. She wasn't in the bridal party. That was intentional. I had chosen friends from work and college, women who'd seen me through career pivots and heartbreaks. I didn't want the emotional weight of navigating sisterhood politics during wedding planning. But under pressure from my mother, I added Lyndon last minute. She just wants to feel included, Mom said. You're always so independent. Try to let her in for once. So I let her in, just a crack, and she walked through like it was her house. And Lyndon began forwarding inspo from wedding blogs, emailing vendors behind my back, and referring to our day in texts. When I asked her to ease off, she laughed and said, I'm just trying to help you not make boring choices. I should have drawn a line right there, but I hesitated, because I didn't want to seem like the jealous sister, the dramatic one, the one who couldn't share. Then Graham began acting strange too. He grew quieter when Lyndon was around, more distracted. Once, I found them talking on the balcony during a family dinner. They went silent when I stepped outside. She was just asking about our honeymoon plans, Graham said. Didn't realize it was classified information. I didn't press. I didn't want to be that woman. Suspicious. Controlling. 2 weeks later, my parents invited us all over for dinner. Nothing unusual, until my mother said there was something important they wanted to discuss. What followed felt like an ambush in slow motion. My father cleared his throat, avoiding eye contact. Thalia, things have changed. Financially, your mother and I, well, we can't support your wedding the way we promised. I blinked. It's fine. We're covering most of it anyway. It was always optional. But, my mother jumped in, Lyndon and Evan just got engaged. I turned to Lyndon, who flashed a sparkling ring I'd never seen before. We're thinking June 15th, she said, smiling. Same venue. It's already all set up. It just makes sense. My fork clattered onto the plate. That's my date, I said flatly. That's my venue. That's my wedding. Yours isn't for another few months, my mother said carefully. There's time to reschedule. No, I said. There's not. I signed the contract, paid the deposits. Technically, your name and Graham's are both on the paperwork, my father murmured. So Evan and Lyndon spoke with the venue coordinator, and they were able to transfer everything. Just like that, stolen, formal wear and flower arrangements and menus, stripped from me and handed to her. I looked at Graham, waiting for outrage. He just shrugged. Maybe it's not worth fighting over, he said. We can always find another venue. My body went cold. Lyndon leaned in, voice sweet as syrup. You can cry later. This day belongs to me now. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about love or family. This was war. For the next few days, I moved like a sleepwalker, answering emails, showing up to work, nodding through meetings, but everything felt muted, disjointed. I kept thinking, they couldn't have done this. Not really, not without realizing what it meant. But the truth was sharper than denial. They didn't care. Or worse, they thought I'd just accept it, like always. I tried to fight back. I called the venue, explained the mistake. It's not a mistake, the coordinator said apologetically. The couple on the contract submitted a written change request. Both names match. Graham had signed it, without telling me. The betrayal burned deeper than anything my family had done. He didn't even try to hide it. I just thought, why escalate things, he said. It's not like the wedding defines the relationship. Except it wasn't about the wedding anymore. It was about how little I mattered. Lyndon began posting on Instagram. A countdown. Photos of dresses, ones nearly identical to the designs I had bookmarked. A caption that read, "Dreams come true in the most unexpected ways." She tagged the venue, the florist, even the band I had chosen. I wanted to scream. Instead, I called Rena. She came over with a bottle of Cabernet and a fire in her eyes. This is not a misunderstanding, she said, scrolling through Lyndon's posts. It's theft. Systematic, targeted, manipulative theft. And Graham, don't even get me started on that smirking sociopath. I half laughed, half cried. It's so calculated. She's copying everything, even the first dance song. And Graham, he's not angry, he's calm, like this was always part of the plan. Maybe it was, Rena said darkly. Or maybe they're both getting played. That stopped me cold. What do you mean? Rena hesitated. Do you know how Evan met Lyndon? I shook my head. She said it was random, coffee shop. Rena frowned. And yet he has all the same interests Graham claimed to have, the same obscure hobbies. Even his speech patterns feel familiar. I pulled out my laptop, opened Lyndon's engagement post. Evan stood beside her, a polished man with a charming smile and eyes I hadn't noticed before. Eyes that didn't smile back. Eyes that reminded me of someone else. The next day, I came home early and found Graham gone. His laptop was still on the kitchen counter. His phone buzzed on the table. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The screen lit up with a message. Meeting confirmed. EP bringing the documents. 9 p.m. Wyndham Lobby. EP. Evan Porter? No, not anymore. I grabbed my coat and keys. When I arrived at the hotel, I stayed in the shadows of the lobby bar. It didn't take long. Graham was already seated, flipping through a folder. A man approached. Evan. Or whoever he really was. They shook hands like old colleagues, not like future in-laws. They spoke in hushed tones, exchanging papers, a USB drive. I didn't hear the words. I didn't need to. I saw enough. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a wedding hijack. It was a long game, and I just stumbled onto the center of it. I didn't go home that night. I drove straight to Rena's apartment, heart pounding, skin crawling. When she opened the door, I was already halfway through explaining. They know each other, I said. Graham and Evan, or whoever he is. I saw them at the Wyndham. Papers, USB drives, the whole deal. This wasn't a setup for a wedding. It was a setup for something bigger. Rena didn't ask if I was sure. She just said, "We need help." By morning, we had hired a private investigator, Samuel Herrick, former white-collar crimes unit, now working freelance out of a downtown office that smelled like stale coffee and burned paper. I gave him everything: names, phone numbers, emails, copies of contracts, Graham's business card, and a printed screenshot of Evan's LinkedIn profile. "Give me a few days," he said. "But from what you're describing, I doubt this is just about money. It's about positioning, access." He was right. 3 days later, he called me back. "Your fiancé," he began, "isn't Graham Mercer. His real name is Grayson Keller, former CFO of Apex Holdings. He resigned during a federal audit. Never charged, but the SEC has a sealed report involving misappropriation of investor funds." My stomach twisted. "And Evan?" "Evan Porter doesn't exist either. He's Eli Petroff, former legal counsel at Apex, helped cover Keller's exit. They've worked together before, quietly. Untraceable shell companies, silent capital moves. And now," Herrick continued, "they've rebranded. New names, new cities, new fiancés, but the same goal: financial infiltration." I cross-referenced recent filings. They just launched a new advisory firm together, Porter Keller Capital. "Jesus. Your father's name appeared in their proposal packets," Herrick added. "They're targeting board members at his credit union. If he introduces them, even informally, that opens a gateway. One endorsement, one warm handoff, they're in." It all clicked. The urgency, the sudden engagement, the obsession with wedding logistics. They didn't care about flowers or vows. They wanted my father's network, my family's legitimacy, and I was the access point, or I had been. Now Lyndon was. "That's why they needed to swap the weddings," I whispered. "It wasn't jealousy, it was strategy." Rena nodded slowly. "Lyndon is easier to manipulate, more emotional. She thinks she's winning some petty sisterly game, but she's a pawn. And Grayson, played me to get there." That night, I stared at my reflection for a long time. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I planned. I contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division and handed over everything Herrick had compiled. Emails, entity registrations, their meeting at the hotel, Graham's alternate identity, Petrov's legal past, the shell companies. They were interested, but cautious. "We need proof of intent to defraud," said Agent Reynolds. "Ideally, a recorded pitch. something we can trace to money movement or solicitation. I think they're planning to pitch at the rehearsal dinner, I said. There'll be banking executives there, my dad's colleagues. She paused. Can you get us in? I can do better, I replied. I'll be there. I'll wear a wire. Rena looked horrified when I told her. That's dangerous. No, I said quietly. What's dangerous is letting them walk away and ruin more lives. I've been the quiet daughter, the reasonable one, my whole life. Not anymore. The game had changed, and this time, I wasn't the target. I was the trap. June 15th. The day that should have been mine. Instead of walking down the aisle, I walked into Lakeside Ridge, wearing a navy sheath dress and a calm expression that masked everything underneath. Clipped to my collar was a brooch. Simple, elegant, and wired. The FBI agents waited outside in an unmarked sedan. My part was simple. Get the recording. The venue looked breathtaking, because I had designed it that way. The flowers, the lighting, even the soft jazz floating through the air, it was all mine, and now it was hers. Lyndon sparkled in her white rehearsal dress, playing the perfect bride-to-be. My parents greeted me with restrained politeness, clearly unsure if I was there to behave or explode. I did neither. I watched. Grayson, was already handing out his investment folders to my father's banking friends. Evan, or Eli, stood beside him like a well-rehearsed echo. During dinner, I waited. They smiled. I smiled back. Then Evan rose, clinking his glass. Before dessert, I'd like to say a few words. Not just about love, but about legacy. Some of you have received materials about Porter Keller Capital. I stood. Before you invest, I said clearly, you need to know who you're dealing with. Gasps broke through the room as I walked to the AV table. With one click, my laptop illuminated the screen behind me. Grayson Keller, formerly Graham Mercer. SEC investigation. Apex Holdings. Slide 2. Eli Petrov, a.k.a. Evan Porter. Legal counsel for Apex. No longer licensed. Whispers turned to murmurs. Chairs scraped. My father looked stunned. These men orchestrated this wedding, I said, to gain access to my family's network. This isn't about love, it's about money. Graham's voice was low, measured. Thalia, let's not do this here. You already did. More slides followed. Company registrations, email exchanges. One even listed Lyndon's name as a leverage asset. She turned pale. You used me, she whispered, eyes locked on Evan. He didn't deny it. The doors burst open. Agent Reynolds entered with two others, badges raised. Grayson Keller, Eli Petrov, you're under investigation for securities fraud and wire fraud. Please come with us. Grayson tried to protest. Evan didn't move. The room turned to chaos. I stood still. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. My father leaned against the wall. Lyndon sat down slowly, bouquet slipping from her hand. You knew, she said, barely audible. I tried to tell you, I replied. Silence settled like ash, the wreckage of what could have been, but also what was saved. I didn't feel vindicated, I felt free. In the days that followed, everything unraveled. The wedding was canceled. The venue quietly scrubbed Lyndon's name from their calendar. News of the FBI investigation spread through my father's banking circles like wildfire. He stepped down from the credit union board within the month. My mother stopped calling altogether. Lyndon disappeared for a while. Some friend's lake house, I heard. She left behind a trail of silence and shame. She never apologized, not at first, not directly. But weeks later, a letter arrived in thick ivory paper. Her handwriting, unmistakable. I don't expect forgiveness, it began. But I finally see it. I see what I've done. And more importantly, I see what I let myself become. It wasn't an excuse, it was recognition. And that mattered more than I expected. Grayson, pleaded guilty. 5 years in federal prison. Evan, or Eli, took a deal. 3 years and restitution neither of them could pay. Their scam had nearly reached the finish line, and I had stopped it. I moved out of the apartment we once shared, sold the ring, took a job offer in Portland. Smaller firm, slower pace, but it gave me something I hadn't had in a long time, peace. I decorated my new apartment with soft things. Linen curtains, wooden shelves, a small herb garden on the balcony. No one's taste but mine. Some nights I still think about it all. How close I came to marrying a man who saw me as a gateway, not a partner. How easily my family offered me up, again, for someone else's gain. But those thoughts pass faster now. I'm learning that healing isn't a perfect arc. It's messy, sometimes quiet, sometimes sharp. But it's forward. Always forward. And for the first time in my life, I'm not building my identity around who I am to someone else. I'm just Thalia. Not the older sister. Not the forgotten daughter. Just me. And that's more than enough.